Did you know that the real reason you haven't actually been able to build a healthy and happy relationship with food and sugar is that you probably haven't done the deep inner work yet? Now, most women I see have been trained by society and the diet industry to look in all of the wrong places for the answers to their struggles and addictive patterns with sugar. Going only surface deep in their healing is only going to give you the surface deep results. These are things like focusing on detoxing from sugar for 30 days, soaking in information endlessly without actually taking any action on what you're learning, or just maybe doing a few sessions with a therapist and expecting decades of challenges and addictive patterns to be healed just like that. Well, sister, there is so much more to it. And as you know by now, if you've been listening to this show for a while, my passion is helping women actually uncover and do the real deep inner work and healing that's necessary to really create lasting change from the inside out. And that's what we're talking about here in today's episode. What is the actual root cause of our addictive patterns with sugar, our emotional eating habits with food, and how do we begin the process of healing these root causes? Now, I want to be upfront and honest. This work is not for the faint of heart. It takes time, it takes commitment, it takes the right guidance and support, but it is also going to be the most rewarding journey you will ever go on. And if you are ready to get serious about doing this deep inner work, creating the lasting and peaceful relationship with sugar by first creating this peaceful relationship with yourself, then you're definitely going to want to come and grab your spot and join us in the upcoming Emotional Empowerment Program. This is my signature 8-week program where we are diving in deep together to do the root cause work, the root emotional work that is ultimately going to shift your whole relationship with food and yourself. Now, the good news is you still have a few days to join us. Registration closes on May 15th. So come and check out all the details about the program and join us for this final round of the Emotional Empowerment Program before I take over a year off from my work, transitioning into motherhood. This is going to be my last hurrah, my last live group program, and I'm so excited to invite you to join us. Now, before we go any deeper, let's take a minute to really just take a deep breath. Take a pause. This practice, these somatic practices of pausing throughout our day are so important. And staying in tune with, as I'm about to dive into today's episode, play the episode for all of you, I want to remind you to really stay in tune with your body here. Stay in tune with what you're feeling, what you're noticing, and even what thoughts are coming up as I share some of these really big root causes with all of you in today's episode. So with that, let's dive in to today's amazing episode. Welcome to the Beyond Sugar Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Dame, holistic nutrition coach and speaker. Let's dive in. All right. Hello, sister. Welcome back to the Beyond Sugar Freedom podcast. As you already know, I'm your hostess with the mostest, Danielle Dame, and I'm here to bring you another powerful episode, a topic that I could talk about endlessly and definitely love bringing little bits of this here to the podcast as much as I can. And obviously we go deeper into this in the upcoming Emotional Empowerment Program. But I'm speaking today on helping all of you really understand the root causes that I've seen working with women for the last almost 9 years and helping them uncover and heal their addictive patterns with food and sugar. And it is very clear to me that there are some major themes that we all carry at the root of what's actually causing us to binge on sugar. As you've been listening to me for a while, you probably know that it's not the physical piece. And I know that for most women, and maybe you're new to this podcast and this is the first time you're hearing this, why you're actually addicted to sugar is not physical. The physical aspect is a byproduct of your addiction to sugar. The actual addictive pattern stems much deeper. And we're going to dive into that today. So if you're a woman who's been really struggling to get off the sugar roller coaster, maybe you feel like you've tried every darn program out there and nothing works. You're feeling exhausted. You're feeling ashamed of yourself, probably even feeling like a failure. And maybe you've even given up hope that it's even possible for you to have a peaceful relationship with sugar. Maybe you've seen all these other people, myself included, really creating this lasting freedom and sense of control with food, and you just feel like there's something wrong with you and you're just never going to have that. Well, I want to share with you today that the truth is none of that is true. And you have probably been looking in the wrong place for your healing and your answers. And so much compassion as I share that tough love with all of you, that when we can't seem to overcome a hurdle or a challenge in our life, it is always simply a matter of finding a new way or a new approach. I always come from the place, and I'm going to stand on my soapbox and stand up for each and every one of you listening to this, that you are so powerful beyond words. You can absolutely overcome anything you want. I mean, heck, we've gotten humans to the moon. Yes, you can overcome sugar addiction. It's just a matter of finding your right path and actually looking and working in the right areas to help you solve this problem, right? We cannot solve, I love the quote one of my mentors shares, you can't solve a problem from the same level that the problem was created. Actually, I think that was Einstein, now that I'm saying that out loud. I think my mentor shares that from Einstein. So when we're in the same, we have our blinders on, like, those little blinders that horses wear, right? So they can't see to the left or the right. We've got our blinders on. You have your blinders on, and you've been focusing in the wrong areas. And I see this with every single woman that comes to work with me. As I take those blinders off and support them in looking to the left, looking to the right, seeing other pathways in their healing journey, everything changes. And this is where my unique approach really understands that your relationship with sugar is just a reflection and a mirror of your relationship with yourself. And this is really at the base of everything I do, and at the base of, the upcoming emotional empowerment program. We're understanding that really this work with food and our habits with food and our addictive patterns with food stem from internal challenges, our relationship with ourselves, and the wounding that we all carry internally. There's a deep reason that you're hooked on sugar, right? And using it to cope or get through or feel a certain way every single day. And unless you're willing to actually put on your big girl pants and do this inner work, nothing will ever change in your life and your health. You're going to continue to stay on this yo-yoing roller coaster with your blinders on. And my goal in this episode is to help you start taking those blinders off, to start planting some seeds of hope and helping you step into your power so you can understand that you can do this. And to continue with the tough love, right? This reminder for any of you listening who are just focusing on another 30-day detox, a cleanse, doing, eating different products, maybe even focusing on what meal planning, just what you're eating. The food part is actually a byproduct of what's going on inside. And when you actually start shifting your foundation inside, the food stuff happens naturally. The healthy relationship with food, the wanting to nourish your body with good nutrients, the knowing what food works for you and what doesn't, right? Knowing what intermittent fasting schedule works for you and doesn't, right? All of these things start from the inside. So we need to stop focusing on these external surface level pieces and get real, right? It's time to dive deep. It's time to get real with yourself, and in a loving way, not in a shameful way, like you've been doing it wrong. That's not my message here. Yes, you have been doing it wrong, but that's okay because it's not your fault, right? This is what the industry has beat down your throat for decades, and probably ever since you were a child. This is what you were taught. This is how we approach problems. We just willpower ourselves through. We just focus over here, right, on this next flashy diet product that's going to solve all my problems, or this flashy pill that's going to make everything better. And it's not working. So for those of you who are listening to this that are ready to get real with yourselves, ready to really face the truth that what you've been doing isn't working, and that just means that you've been looking in the wrong spot. Let me put it this way as well. I love sharing this analogy. I actually just recorded an episode with a beautiful guest, and we had this conversation, and I loved it because I was realizing as I was talking to her that, obviously our relationship with sugar is so darn complex, right? It is so complicated, and we use it for so many reasons. Sugar has become the way that we feel joy, the way we feel and express love, the way we connect, the way we comfort ourselves, the way we feel happiness. It's our best friend. It's all of these pieces, right? These filling these deep emotional and psychological and energetic needs for us. So when you go ahead and just do a 30-day sugar detox, for example, and remove your crutch, remove sugar from your life, all of these areas that sugar was being used for are now open wounds. And you don't yet have a reference for how to support yourself in those areas. You don't yet know how else to find joy, how else to fill up your love cup, how else to feel connected or comfort yourself or soothe yourself when life is hard. So none of these foundational pieces have any tools attached to them, any resources. You're just like this fish out of water now without sugar in your life. And all of these wounds, all of these areas or unhealthy patterns that were sugar was being used for are now left exposed. And it's no wonder, of course you're going to fail. Of course you're not going to make it. You might willpower yourself for 30 days, but of course you're not going to make it. You don't have the tools yet and the foundation in place for sugar to no longer be needed in your life. And this is where my approach is so radically different, and why I'm like, you can hear it in my voice. I'm just like on my soapbox right now. I'm so passionate about this because you have to start with the root. You have to start with what's inside. And that's what I'm about to share with all of you today. You know, what are these root causes? We're going to get to that in just a second. But I really just want to paint this picture with why this is so important. Like, don't even bother making changes in your life unless you're willing to, I'm going to say this boldly, unless you're willing to actually look inward and you're actually willing to do some of this deep work to rebuild some of these old patterns, these old pathways where you were using sugar in the past. So that when you go and get ready to, yes, remove sugar from your life, to detox from sugar, an important part of the cleansing of the body journey. And that might be months down the line, because you may first really have a lot of work to do around love, around joy, around feeling your emotions, around like finding happiness and comfort and friends without sugar. So that is where we need to start. Then we can start worrying about the food stuff. And this might seem really counterintuitive and weird to a lot of you. And that's kind of, I love it, because I'm kind of weird and I love going against the grain, because clearly we need to do something radically different if we want radically different results than we've been getting our whole lives. And any of you who are listening, they're like, yes, Danny, yes, then you're in the right place, because we're going to be diving into this and definitely guiding somatically very deep work in the upcoming emotional empowerment program. For any of you who are listening to this, are like, okay, I'm ready. I'm terrified, but I'm ready to do this deep inner work. Definitely come join us. You can find the link in the show notes below. So now the question becomes, right? And obviously the title of this podcast episode gives it away, but what are these inner work pieces? Danny, you're talking about all this, the root cause, this inner work, right? What is really at the core of why my sugar addiction exists, why my emotional eating pattern exists? Great question. That's exactly why I wanted to record this episode for you, because I know there's so many of you out there having that question. And as I've mentioned already, this is literally the blueprint I'm about to share with you that we follow in the emotional empowerment program every week, walking through a different root core wound and core root cause of our sugar addiction, so we can start to build the tools that we need there in order to remove sugar and have it not be a big deal, and have ourselves resilient and grounded and ready to take that step to no longer need food, right? I want you to imagine for a second what your life will look like when you no longer need food other than for nourishment and sustenance every day, right? When you don't need sugar to feel a certain way, you don't need it to finish your day. You don't need it as you're watching TV at the end of the day. You don't need it when you go to a party and you're not hungry and everybody else is eating snacks, and you just don't have that pull anymore, right? Where you're in control and it no longer drives you in because it's not filling a need. You're filling your own needs now. It's life-changing. It's life-changing. And this is lifelong work. So I'm going to share with you now some of the big themes of the inner work. Like, what are these actual pieces at the foundation? I often share in my live trainings and in my programs, like this analogy of a house, right? On a foundation. It's got this solid, like concrete foundation or whatever they build foundations out of where you live. And when your foundation is riddled with cracks, you're going to keep trying to build this healthy relationship, aka house, with sugar on top, and it's going to keep crumbling. So you have to get in there and actually patch and heal these cracks, these fissures in the actual foundation. So that's what we're doing here and what we're talking about when I'm talking about inner work. And I've kind of chosen to separate these out. So I want to share these sort of in two categories with you. There's kind of what I call the core work. So these are the biggest things that are going to move the needle when we really focus on this and focus months, if not years of healing this. I mean, I'm still working through a lot of these pieces, especially when we mention the word trauma. I think that's lifelong work as we're healing these old wounds we carry. And then I'm going to share a couple of items here that I call like byproduct work. So when we do the core work, these other areas get shifted and get moved and automatically start getting healed. But they are areas that do need some attention and love as well, but they're sort of happen automatically. I find when I've been doing this work with my clients and myself is as soon as I start doing the core work, these byproduct pieces just automatically start happening at the same time, which is kind of cool. So that this isn't like a lot of this work is pretty fascinating because as soon as we start diving into it, one area of it, maybe it's the emotional piece, right? This is a big part, obviously, of the work that I do in the upcoming program, but the emotional piece, right? You're going to start noticing as soon as you do that, you're going to start doing some inner child healing. You're going to start connecting to your body more. You're going to start setting maybe healthier boundaries or knowing what you need. So there's a lot that unfolds. Okay. So enough teasing. Let's get to it. So the core work. Okay. I'm going to share these really quickly. We don't have the space in one podcast episode to dive into these. Each of these could be their own podcast episode. And that's why we spend a whole week, at least, if not, longer into the program, diving into and really exploring these topics and applying different tools and different strategies to really look at this. But when we look at the root of addiction, right? The main thing that we look at is trauma and nervous system regulation. So trauma and this sense that we have an imprint in our bodies that we all got in childhood, that it's not safe to be in our body. It's not safe to feel. It's not safe to be my authentic self. Whatever the message was, these are really the most common ones in the society that we grew up in. At some level, this is not in your brain. Okay, so you might be listening to me going, no, that doesn't really make sense, Danny. This is in your body. This is stored in your nervous system. So this isn't something you're consciously aware of. This is definitely an imprint in one way or another that we all had in our early years in childhood and obviously after that, but those are the most influential years. So trauma being things that obviously have happened to us and things that we didn't receive that we needed. For example, unconditional love, attunement. There's energetic and psychological needs that infants and children need that most of us didn't fully get, myself included. So understanding that these in themselves are wounds or openings for our nervous system to become wired incorrectly, we'll call it. So dysregulated in a way where our system doesn't really feel relaxed. It doesn't really know how to actually feel emotions because it's not safe to do so. And there's a lot of layers here when it comes to like working with the nervous system, but trauma and nervous system work 100% is ground zero where I start with all of my clients. This is where I'm so passionate about the somatic work that I'm bringing more into my programs, the breath work I'm bringing in, the somatic tools that I'm teaching to help us reconnect with the wisdom of our body and move emotions. So obviously another core wound here, as you can see, they all tie together, is emotional healing. The emotional work, learning how to actually feel again. Who would have thought that's a part of healing your relationship with sugar, right? But if you are not honoring your emotions and actually learning how to process and move that energy through your body, you will continue to use sugar to stuff them down. This is an age-old pattern. This is part of our trauma nervous system imprint, right? When it's not safe to feel emotions, we've just disconnected from this part of our body. We don't know how to feel them. We definitely don't know how to be with them, to sit in our anger, to sit in our grief, and learning how to unravel this and build a new sense of safety around feeling emotions, and then building tools as to how to process and support ourselves when these emotions come up, right, is mandatory work. And a big part of what we're doing in the upcoming program, really navigating through all these emotional pieces. Also within this, the core work, the core wounding is our inner child. We need to do some work with our inner child. This is that part of us, the young part of us that's still very much active and alive, very much wounded. We all carry some sort of wound here in our younger years, in our child self, and reconnecting, even just building a relationship between her and our adult selves is a massively important piece of no longer feeling that need to fill a void with sugar. So when we start doing the trauma work, the emotional healing part, the inner child just comes in naturally. But this is a big part of the core wounding that we all carry. And we need to look back to really heal those wounds so we can move forward, right? And also in this bubble of core wounding is this disconnection from our authentic self. So here's a big part of our healing journey where we need to learn how to actually be our authentic self. And step one is learning who the heck that is. Most of us have no idea who our authentic self is because in our society, it wasn't safe to be our authentic self. We learned instead how to fit in, right? We learned very strategically in school, in our households, maybe in a religious cultures that you were in, or even geographical cultures. There's a lot of ways that this shows up, but we've learned how to belong, right? This is a big need, psychological need as a young adult to fit in. So we've learned how to do that in our family, right? We learned how to shape and mold ourselves to get the love that we needed from our caregivers, to fit in with our peers. And in this process, we unlearned how to fully authentically be ourselves. And it's very rare that any of you listening to this are fully your authentic self. I'm still on this journey. I'm absolutely still on this journey right with you. But just noticing that this is probably one of the biggest traumas and one of the core wounds that we all carry is this disconnection from, again, it's not safe to be me. If I'm me, love is going to be pulled away. I'm going to lose my friends. I mean, that was a big part of my story, was very traumatic for me. And all these other, I'm going to be kicked out of the tribe and then I'm going to die. It's a survival mechanism, right? To prioritize belonging and fitting in with being our crazy, weird, loud selves, right? I'm expressing my true self right there. I'm crazy. I'm silly. I'm goofy. I'm loud. I'm big energy, bright light, and I'm owning it more and more every year. So that's a big wound that we all carry. And the work here, the core work here, is to uncover who we truly are, explore who we truly are, and begin living in that way outwardly, using our voice, speaking our truth, standing up for ourselves, right? Really stepping into our power as women. This is massive because we're all so powerful and it's been totally taken away from us our whole lives. And it just makes me angry thinking about it. Core wound. Next one, disconnection from our body. So again, you can see how these are all really tied in, but at some point in our lives, we disconnected from our body, especially if you hate your body, right? Especially if you don't like the way your body looks or how it feels. It's safer to just disassociate and disconnect. This is also a trauma response, disassociation. In earlier years, we disconnect from feeling because it's too big to feel. A lot of, like, especially if you have big T trauma, there's too big of stuff and we don't know how to handle it. So let's just shut it off. But also just a total disconnection from our physical body. And this is where somatic work is so deeply important, is reconnecting with our wisdom, reconnecting with your intuition. I mean, ladies, this is our source of our power and the most magnificent source of knowledge, our intuition, and it has been robbed of us. Thank you, patriarchy, for totally pushing aside any woo-woo, voodoo, energy, womb healing intuition, right? That was very looked down on for the past, many decades. And now we're getting to reawaken to that, ladies, and really tune into this source of knowledge that we all carry that is our connection to a higher power, our connection to our higher selves, and trusting our bodies. So the body work is so deeply important. And combined with that, really, this other last core piece that I'll mention here is self-love. I mean, all of this comes back to really tapping into learning how to unconditionally love ourselves. And I know for a fact that 99% of women out there in this world do not. And I'm still working on this myself, full disclosure, right? I'm not 100% there. I don't love myself all the time, but I've come so far. And it's really an important journey as we step more into self-compassion and learning how magnificent and powerful and beautiful we are. And this part of us, this wound of actually just hating ourselves, right, is massive. And no wonder we're just going to want to avoid and cope with sugar. So this is big. I wholeheartedly believe when we fully love ourselves, we will not treat this body that is our temple like shit. We're not going to want to sabotage. We're not going to want to let ourselves get into a state of deep dis-ease and unhealthy. We want to nourish our bodies when we love ourselves. We want to treat our bodies and ourselves with that love. And that is reciprocated in the foods we choose, the movements, the activities, the people we surround ourselves with. Those are all manifestations of self-love. So the fact that you have an unhealthy relationship with sugar tells me that you don't fully love yourself. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's most women. So just acknowledging that and choosing to work on that is a big part of the work that I love to do with my clients. And as you can tell, a very big part of the core work. So that's really at the core. These are the biggest things. And if you just focus in on these, you could spend years of really powerful, potent, amazing healing for yourself. Healing your nervous system, healing past wounds and traumas, letting go of old wounds, old people, inner child healing, emotional healing, reconnecting to your authentic self and your body, and obviously learning to love yourself. And then once you start doing this work, you're going to naturally notice the byproduct work start to take place. This is things like shifting your belief systems and your mindset, which starts by the emotional trauma healing. As soon as you start feeling like you're worthy and lovable and that it's safe to feel emotions, those beliefs are going to shift. So these limiting beliefs and these toxic beliefs that you have about yourself, about the world, about food, about sugar, right? Your mindset, your thought patterns on a daily basis, these are things that are naturally going to change. You're going to start to notice that, wow, I'm actually lovingly talking to myself right now while I'm choosing to eat this brownie, right? Or I had that binge last night that kind of sucked and I feel like crap today, but I'm being kind to myself about it. And I know that I can get back on track. So the beliefs and mindset piece is absolutely a big part of the work, but it's also something that happens naturally when you're doing some of the core work. Again, trust is also a piece here. That byproduct happens as you reconnect to your body. You start trusting yourself again. You start learning how to be in integrity with yourself, trusting yourself, trusting a higher power, and trusting your own resiliency. And then, of course, boundaries. I love this. I love when this starts to happen and the women in my program start to set healthy boundaries. They start saying no. They're stepping out of their people-pleasing tendencies because they know that they're worth looking after themselves first. And they don't have to say yes to everybody in order to get their love because they love themselves. It's really beautiful when we stop taking on other people's shit. We stop taking on other people's emotions. We stop taking on other people's like shame or guilt or blame. And we approach relationships and situations and work with love for ourselves first. And that shows up as setting healthy boundaries, using our voice, right? No longer people pleasing to a point where it is totally wreaking havoc on our lives. It also starts unfolding as we do this work, connection and community. These are two areas that are majorly missing in most people's lives. We have a false sense of what connection and community means. And when we come together, why I love hosting my programs in group setting is for this purpose. The healing happens when we're in community. And as we start working through our core wounds, we start to also notice the wounding that we all carry around community, especially with other women. The times we've been stabbed in the back, the times that, a friend just abandoned us, the times that all these weird things happen, right? So coming back together to feel safe in community is a really, really big part of the work. And then, of course, again, these other byproduct things that are going to happen is you're going to start noticing your anxiety reduced. You're going to be less depressed. You're going to be able to rid yourself of the shame and the guilt that you've been carrying your whole life. And perfectionism. I know every single one of my clients struggle with perfectionism. So this is a big part as well that we need to look at. Like, where are those perfectionist tendencies coming from? And they're usually stemming from some sort of trauma nervous system imprint that, of course, once you've started working on that, will start to fade away. You'll know that, hey, I don't have to do things perfectly to be loved, right? I don't have to do things perfectly to feel worthy. And I can actually be eating really well and have a shitty night and then just get back up on it the next day. And it doesn't mean that I wasn't perfect or that I'm a failure. So the self-compassion, self-love piece, really ties into that as well. So there you have it. That's the main framework. Obviously, there's lots of other little pieces below a lot of these topics, but this is really the framework that I'm just laying out for all of you that we're diving into in the Emotional Empowerment Program that closes for registration in just a few days. So definitely don't wait to come and check out the link and grab your spot in the show notes below. There's more here, I've said, right? But these are really the main ones. And every single woman I've ever worked with has had work to do in all of these areas. So it is really a step-by-step. There's no rush. This is lifelong work. And each of these areas really needs to be addressed and healed if you actually want to create a lasting, peaceful relationship with food and yourself that sticks, right? That is permanent. This is like creating real change as opposed to just something that you're good at for a year because you willpowered yourself through it. This is why my focus with my clients goes so far beyond talking about food. I rarely talk about food, rarely talk about sugar with my clients. We rarely do meal planning. I mean, that is an important part eventually of the journey, but there's so much more than just focusing on the white stuff. You can see that now. I hope you can see that now. Can you see that now? I hope so. And I know it looks like a lot, okay? And it can take a lot of time. It can be a lot of work. It can be really hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is hard work. This healing takes time. But you also didn't get to where you are right now overnight, right? And unraveling these patterns will take some time, commitment, and the right guidance and support. But my goal and my hope right now as we wrap up this episode is that you're finally seeing it's possible. You know, I'm speaking to the woman in this episode who has tried everything and just doesn't feel like it's for them and is so tired of being on this yo-yo dieting roller coaster year after year and continuing to damage their self-esteem, their body, all the things, right? I want you to know that it's possible to take your blinders off. And it's quite possible that the reason you haven't had success yet is because you've been looking in all the wrong places for the answer. You've been looking in the wrong places. And you can, with the right guidance, a different approach, whether that's my approach or someone else's different approach, you just need to do something different if you want different results. And if you want to do that, you know, I'm going to be guiding you through each of these pieces and sharing my favorite somatic tools as we navigate these inner wounds, these root causes, and heal our foundational cracks in our foundation together in the Emotional Empowerment Program. I'm so excited to be hosting another round of this 8-week powerful group program that kicks off in just a few weeks, the end of May. But registration, as I've mentioned a few times, closes on May 15th. So do not delay, because I think that's only a few days from the time this episode goes live. Come and check out all the details on the info page in the show notes below. And of course, email me, reach out if you have any questions about the program. And I'm so excited to hopefully have you join us, help you really dive into these pieces if you're ready. And you're going to be terrified. By the way, being ready does not mean fear does not exist. Being ready to actually get real and do this deep work, you're going to be afraid. There's going to be anxiety. There's going to be nerves. This is your ego's way of trying to prevent you from making progress and moving forward. And it's all good. It's all part of it. But I want you to listen to that part of you, that higher part of you, your higher self. Is there a calling in your heart, in your gut? Is there just a part of you that knows this is what you need to do and you're ready to finally do something different to get different results? And if that is you, then this is the perfect program for you. And I hope that you will definitely come and join us in my grand finale program before I slide into taking some time off. As I've mentioned already on the podcast, I'm going to be taking at least a year off to transition into motherhood. So this is it. This is my last live program for at least a year and a half. And I'm so excited to just go all in with the amazing women who have already joined, and we're getting started real soon. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode. I hope that you loved this. I hope that this really planted a lot of seeds of hope and of clarity for you around where maybe you've been focusing on the wrong things and how you can really start refocusing your healing journey so you can get out of this roller coaster with sugar and food for good. That's my hope. That's my hope for all of you. And we'll see you all on the next episode. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. If you're loving what we talked about today, please remember to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone you love. And if you're ready to dive deeper into discovering your root causes and patterns that are keeping you hooked on sugar,